Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to start a new theme this week, and as we always do at the beginning-ish of January, I guess it usually lines up towards the middle of January, huh? We're going to check out some of y'all's favorite tracks from last year, and we're going to capstone this... We're going to end this week with my favorite albums of the previous year. I think last year it took like 3 weeks to do because I wanted to showcase like 30 albums, but I'm going to try to condense it down into a single video this year, much like I did in 2022. Anyways, that's for me to figure out over the course of this week. All you all have to do is wait until Saturday to see that countdown listicle. Not an article, list video? I don't know. Anyways, we're checking out your favorites this week though, and today we're going to be looking at a track from Eivør. This was described to me as Eivor's a Faroese singer. She's been a bit of a chameleon over 11 albums, mostly folk and pop, but some symphonic and classical too. However, her 2024 album sounded like Enya doing dark electronic. That sounds great, honestly. This is the title track, a stunning and enchanting song. There's English translation for the wonderful lyrics on her Bandcamp, so that's great. I like that. Means I won't have to deal with a terrible Google Translate of it. Let's dive in. See what Eivør is bringing to the table with the track N. Great atmosphere. I mean, we have this tone sitting underneath everything, but the vocals, the delivery of them, the piercing elements just really cutting through. There's no noise to cut through yet. It's just a very narrow sound, but also with all the reverb. It's just really great. So much energy, tension right here. I think mostly just in that ambient synth and this very rigid drums. There's so much room for this to grow and explode into different directions. I like that vocal stack, especially with the lighter vocals off to the side. I mean, there's already a lot of reverb on this middle vocal to drift out to the edges, but this allows it to drift out even more. Yeah, cool use of glitch to create that rhythmic idea. And it's tastefully done. We only heard it twice. Enough to plant that seed without overdoing it. Eliminating out the bass. We actually saw this in the last transition too. And when it comes back in, it's going to just feel like a puzzle piece fitting into place. Okay, so left to the center, to the right, a cool little passing off of the baton there. So that movement right there, those three chords, that plays a big part in this. Just take this last half minute to wind things down. Ooh, that sub bass. And see, that's the reverb I'm talking about. It's so large. It continues to exist long past after the note has stopped being sung. Yeah, I enjoyed that. It's definitely one of those tracks that you have to enjoy what's going on, though. I think if I had a criticism for it, just on my own biases, what I prefer in music, it's not quite as dynamic as I would like. I had mentioned at the beginning that there was a lot of tension there, ready for growth to expand out of, and the song never really got outside of that original feeling. It did explore a bit of variation within it. We cut out the bass in parts, we added more layers, but it never really expanded into something new. For the most part, what you got in the first minute was what you got in the 7th minute. But I think when you approach it on its own terms, I think it does everything right. There's a lot of really cool ideas in here that I quite enjoyed, and I think overall the aesthetic is captivating, which honestly for a song like this, that's the goal of it. You know, the song's purpose, at least as far as I can see it, is to create a vibe and fully explore it. And if you're going to spend 7 minutes inside of one atmosphere, it better captivate the audience. So what is going on in here though? there is a core pulse given to us by both some percussion and a synth that sits at the bottom of the song. It's a single, I think it's a single tone from the synthesizer, but it creates this root tone that exists throughout the entire song pretty much, except for the places where all the synths are removed. It makes the song feel static, never really moves anywhere, doesn't change anything harmonically. It's always in this one mode constantly. It's how the melody, the vocals that sit on top of it, how they work with this core sound underneath that modulates the feeling from section to section. It's not so much that the chords are changing, it's that the notes played along with the chords are recontextualizing what kind of mode we're in. Um, and that's a really smart way to go about this because it creates this duality in the track. There is a lack of motion, sure, in the harmonic area, but that doesn't mean that the song doesn't go anywhere. There's a uniformity to the atmosphere, but that doesn't mean that the song is stagnant. It's a song that simultaneously exists within a one bar loop and also explores different sections. I wouldn't call this a linear song, it's not some sort of linear cyclicality, but it does present motion and stillness simultaneously. Um, and I find that to be quite evocative to represent a duality like that. But the other part of the equation, too, is harmonic movement. There is one chord progression in this song, and it's mostly a creation of dyads in a single line melody against that root tone that we get underneath everything. There is three notes that show up frequently in this song from the synth. It's a bit on the lower side of things. We have a home, complete total rest, just a place to showcase contrast against other places. Because the thing is, right, when we have collections of notes, rarely is any collection of notes, a chord, really going to mean much without the progression. It's all about context. And so the purpose of this is to create that home base for all of the other dyads to have contrast against, to be able to say, okay, this is home. So when we reach this, by comparison, it's going to feel this way because that dyad that we go to would feel different. It would have a different emotion tied to it if we had a different starting point. And for those who don't know, dyads are just two note chords. Now, we have this home dyad that we start in, then we move to tension, real strong tension, and then we come down, I think it was a half step, just to land into resolution. We hold that resolution out for two lengths that we saw the other two notes show up as. So if they were, I think it was 2 beats each, so 2 beats, and 4 beats, which gives us an 8 beat idea, which is 2 bars. Um, And this sort of movement defines a lot of what the song is going for. Home, tension, release. Home, tension, release. This is the only type of movement that I feel is very strongly showcased in this entire track. And it's very simple. We're not talking about complex, spicy, jazzy chords. We're talking about simple dyads. We're talking about creating peace. We're talking about creating tension and then to resolve that tension. It is the most basic way of creating a chord progression, but it works so well in this track. I think because of how static everything else is. As far as the harmony goes, a lot of this song feels like it just exists constantly. It doesn't really move or change at all. And I think a lot of that comes down to this static root note that exists underneath the entire track. So harmonically, it feels still. We have these moments of very simple movement that feel, in contrast to pure stillness, like a drastic change of pace. But it also introduces the tension and gets off of it rather quickly. I don't know what this is all supposed to represent. I feel that it's part of what makes it evocative, is that we quickly have these ideas moving, but the idea of turning into tension and just immediately, 1 second later, maybe not even a whole second later, we're already resolving that and then allowing this root tone to take back over just the static position of this song. The movement is gone through quickly and then not returned to for a while. I like the movement. I think it sounds great, but we just don't hear it a lot. And what does that mean? I don't know. I'd love to know. Maybe when we hit the lyrics, some things will click into place, but this is just what I'm hearing on a first time through it. And that, I mean, for the most part, that wraps up my ideas in the instrumental part of this song. There's some cool instruments in here. Sure, I like some of the more, I guess we would call them industrial timbres. There's some clacking and banging of metallic sounds in here. But as far as rhythms go or harmonies, nothing in here really grabs my attention too much. Just that one harmonic movement. Everything else, to me, is designed to sit on the periphery of the track. It's there to create the atmosphere, to be the foundation for the vocal work, and that's it. In a lot of ways, it's very popish from that direction, where the music is secondary to the artist, the vocalist, who is the real reason you're listening to that music, anyways, right? That's not to say that there isn't any technicalities that went into the construction of this song. It does. It's not to say that there isn't intelligence into put into the simplicity. That's not to say that there wasn't a lot of work that went into ensuring that every part of this song was handcrafted in a specific way that went for maximized emotional resonance while still being pushed out to the side. There is a lot of work that goes into creating atmospheres like this for pop or pop adjacent tracks. It is not easy at all to create music that is supposed to blend into the background, but is also supposed to have a strong emotional resonance so that when the vocalist sings the words that they do, you're already in the right emotional state for it to be invisibly impactful. It's, like I said, it's not an easy skill, and I think it's always a bit of a shame when people write off pop music. It might not be complex, but that doesn't mean it isn't difficult. It just isn't on the surface immediately noticeable what kind of difficulty went into creating it. And I think that's what's going on here. A lot of the immediately noticeable elements of the song are simplicity and designed to be pushed to the background. But that does take us to what I think is the main element here, and that's the vocals. I love the vocals. I mentioned this right off the start. In fact, have we heard this vocalist before? I don't think we've listened to any of their solo work, but I think they've been featured in probably a prog rock band that y'all have sent me. I don't know. I gotta look it up. It just dawned on me. I was like, Eivør, that sounds familiar. Although maybe I'm mixing it up with Eivør, which is a prog rock band. Someone correct me on that. Have we listened to anything with Eivør before? Oh, you know what? It might have been during a live stream though. That might be it. I don't know. I gotta look into it. Anyways, I absolutely love her vocals. There's something about them that are immediately recognizable to me, which is why I think we've checked some of her work out before. But what I love is this, again, a duality. If the song is both static and moving, her vocals are both narrow and wide. I mentioned that I think the timbre that she's delivering, the way that she pushes the sound out through her mouth, and the way it resonates before leaving, and where she places her vocals are very directed and pinpoint and narrow. But there's a width to it that I think part of it comes from the production of it, the natural production, how she creates the sound, but another part is definitely in the digital production of it. There is a ton of reverb on this, and the sound starts out pinpoint. It just pierces through. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there isn't even really music here to cut through yet, and I can already feel how sharp the vocals are. But they also resonate and drift outwards. They're very wide and echoey. Echoey is the wrong word, but reverberance, I think, is what I want out of that. And I find this to be an interesting conundrum because this technically shouldn't work. It's either narrow or wide. You can't have both. It's a contradictory statement, but it exists here. And what I really love is during those interlude moments when the music cuts out and we have just the vocals. I don't know if they're added or if they're always there and I just never noticed them, but there are vocal lines out on the side too. So when the middle vocal, reverberates out, it sort of overlaps with them and it extends that sound even further. And I think it's a really great way of showcasing the size of the sound sphere and the soundscape of this track. It feels small based on, I would say, layers and number of instruments, but the sound itself can get pretty large. And I really like that showcasing there using the vocals. There's also a lot of great dexterity in the vocal work here, making these large leaps between notes. Um, a lot of, I'd say, Western pop music likes to use notes that are really close to each other, usually only moving a half step or a whole step away from the note that you're currently singing, maybe jumping up a third, and that's really going to be the biggest it is. The purpose is to create something memorable, and we've learned over the years that memorable melodies are ones without a lot of movement to them. Or at least it's easier to create memorable melodies without a lot of movement. Here, though, we have a lot of jumps, and the other interesting thing about large jumps in vocals, particularly, is the skill to just hear that note in your head and land on it. The nice thing about only moving small distances is that you kind of know where that distance is compared to where you're at. If you're singing a C currently, you know you only have to go up a half step for a D, but if you have to go from a C to an E an octave higher, well, that distance is a bit more difficult to judge unless you know exactly what it feels like to hit that E. And that is a totally different skill set. And I find that to be a lot more impressive to listen to. And we hear a lot of that in here. There's a lot of jumping between octaves in here that I find to be quite mesmerizing. And to me, showcases a lot of skill in the vocalist. So, is there anything else on this? There was something else I wanted to bring up too. What was it? Oh, yeah, dude, production in general. So, I like the atmosphere of it. I like the small movement. I like the contradictory elements of the song. I love the vocal delivery. But something that really stands out to me is the overall production of this, and more importantly, I think the heavy use of bass and even sub bass at times. And I really only picked it up there at the end, but when I thought about the song, it was sort of ever present. There's a darkness to the track that sure comes through harmonically, but also I think comes through timbre and note choice. The synths are all sort of on the lower end of pitch. And since there's a few different synths that are present at any time, there really isn't that large of a range of notes you can pick. And I think that's why the sub bass gets used in some of these sections, but it also means that a lot of this song instrumentally is going to be bass heavy, and it gives the song this grounded darkness that really allows a lot of space to be open for her vocals to sit in. And since there are so many vocal elements in this, particularly at the end as we're trading off, and that whole section was just genius. A vocal line here, then a vocal line there, and it sort of sounds like the voice is jumping around this cave almost. And this person's just teleporting from place to place singing these lines, and the vocals are bouncing around and reverberating and overlapping each. It's just a gorgeous outro to this track. But because we have so many of these parts, and because her vocals tend to be a bit on the higher range, there needs to be a lot of room up there. And so the synths embodying this lower element, I think, creates the darkness to the track, grounds it and roots it, but is also just very practical. It's a smart way to go about doing things. So, yeah, I enjoyed that. Not the kind of music I would typically go out of my way to listen to, but this is a real. If the rest of the album is like this, I might be on board for it. Simply because I like the atmosphere that's on display here. And her vocals are just I could probably listen to some acapella stuff from Eivør, honestly. She just has a really great timbre and tone to her vocals. I'm going to go read those lyrics, and then we'll wrap this video up. This is a beautiful song lyrically. It's about how in troubled times, the character, the narrator, the vocalist, whatever, they can find an escape from the negativity. They can find elements of positivity in the people around them, and that positivity can turn into hope for better futures, and that during times of devastation they will raise their walls and create places of safety for others so that they can return the favor that others have put for them. The first stanza says, "As birds abandon our shore and terror sorrow crowns, I feel my way to your skin-soft fortress grounds under leaden heavens. As misery untold ravages across the sea, into your old blue-eyed love letters I flee." This idea that when things get bad, when sorrow comes up to my shores, I can run away to you and you can make things better. The bridge says devastation, cities bleeding, still it glimmers in racing thoughts, hope. The champion, dust and flesh and skin, still it flickers in ruins oft our flame. When silence is all embraced and land and sea collide, stone on stone my walls I'll raise, in solitude I'll abide under raven heavens. This idea of building hope in others. I love it. Now, what's interesting here, though, is that I don't really catch any of this in the music. Unless the darkness is supposed to represent safety. Well, okay. Let me rearrange this. Instead of the idea of running to someone, it says that I go into your love letters, I flee into them. What if it's about feelings of solitude? Not having someone else to run to, but memories of them, having paraphernalia that reminds you of them. Not necessarily being able to be with them physically, but being with them spiritually or mentally, and having that calm you down so that you might feel alone in this darkness that surrounds you, but you can find light and positivity in your mind of being alone but not being lonely. Maybe I can view it from that, because I was going to say the song is dark. It's not necessarily eerie or creepy or sad, scary, but it's moody. And that's not necessarily a sound I would typically associate with a song of positivity. But maybe when we take it from this perspective of one person alone trying to find solace from misery, I can find that loneliness in the music. And through that lens, I think it works really well. It's even there at the end. It says, "My walls I will raise, in solitude I will bide." So I'll wait this out by myself with my defenses up. Okay, I think I get it from that perspective. That works very well with the music. All right. Yeah. Those are my thoughts on Eivør's End. Oh, also, here's something interesting. End translates to still, and I had mentioned the song doesn't really move much. We have little pieces of movement here and there, but for the most part, it's a static idea from start to finish. But it's about wanting to escape that. And I think that's where the duality comes from, of being both static and moving. Maybe even that's how the vocal production exists, being piercing and reverberant and wide. It's the voice within, something you can't escape, being both piercing, where it cuts right through whatever you're thinking about and speaks to you, but also being all encompassing, being this echoey cavern of the mind. Because, narrow and wide are opposites, but when we're talking about things that don't exist, an inside voice, so to speak, it can break physics. It can do whatever it wants. It can be loud and large and piercing and narrow and all of that combined. Okay, yeah, I think all this is coming together really well now that I know what the song is about. And I think what the artist is aiming for to say within it. All right, so this is where we're really going to wrap this up. Those are my thoughts on Eivor's N. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you have your own opinion or interpretation of this, please put any of that in the comment section alongside any other thoughts you might have. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.